Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report on or don't report on enough. And today, I've just got to sit here and be authentic with you guys, because I'm sure you've noticed that there's just been a change in how I've operated. I used to do like a full 5 underreported stories that you need to know, like the whole ordeal, Monday to Friday and Monday to Thursday, and it's just kind of changed a ton. But long story short, the marketplace for underreported stories on social media is great. But if I can be candid with you, I can't work full time just being well known on Instagram or TikTok. You need to have something longer, or something that makes you a long stay in the marketplace. And so I thought that by bringing this show to you Monday to Thursday, it would be great. But it's a lot of work, like a lot of work. And it's not that I'm lazy or I don't want to do this. It's just that the marketplace demands some short form, some long form. And so what I've decided to do is make this podcast / this is available on YouTube, Rumble, X, etc. And you're going to get this 5 underreported stories, all the fun segments, guests, just authentic talk about myself and my life and whatnot. And I'm going to put that out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I will have like somewhere between 8 to 20 minute video on one single underreported story where we really dive into it. Like, for instance, I've already put out one yesterday that was about a 16-year-old who might have been kidnapped by a hospital over gender identity. Pretty crazy. So stories like that will be out throughout the week. And today's show is going to be a little bit more like, random things, personal life, and then the 5 underreported stories. And then we'll also have some funny segments at the end. Each show is going to be very unique, very fun. But as always, I'm going to keep it based in logic and truth. So yeah. With that being said, I'm sure you guys can hear in my voice, for people that have listened to me long enough, you're probably like, what is wrong with Chrissy? I'm recovering from big Rona. Yeah. And the worst part too is I'm going to have to take breaks to chug water because, well, honestly, I'm emotionally torn about this decision because I'm a crunchy girl. I like my raw milk. I like to get all my food at the farmer's market, blah, blah, blah. But I'm taking this drug called Paxlovid, which is a big pharmaceutical company. You can Google it. It's their drug. And I got it for free because I wasn't going to enrich these people. But I have an autoimmune disease, and I was like, okay, I'm so desperate to feel better. I really want to get back, but it makes my mouth taste like metal. So my whole mouth tastes like, I don't know, I licked the inside of a metal cup. It's just so gross. And I am considering stopping this right now because it's disgusting, but I feel so much better. So I don't know what I want to do about this. I think I'm just in my head right now where I'm I want to work more than I don't want to have my mouth taste like metal, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah. Anyway. Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk about too, before we get into the show, it was so interesting going to the doctor to get the Paxlovid treatment. You could tell. I live in the South. I live in Nashville. They make this huge deal that people or how do I phrase this properly? You could tell the doctor was fed up with dealing with people who have an anti-COVID fear-mongering mentality, which same. So I was sitting there with the doctor and I was are there any natural remedies to fighting this? And she just shut me down and was no, just take Paxlovid. I don't know. I was just kind of okay, lady, I've had COVID 4 times. But I guess I'm in that, like I said, I'm in that phase of life where I'm I care more about getting back to work and getting back to my life than I do about taking Paxlovid. But I have a feeling I'm going to live to regret that. Anyway, that's where we're at. Enough about me and my battle with Big Rona. Here's what we've got on the docket for today. So the infamous race baiter, Robin DiAngelo, she reportedly plagiarized minority scholars. Facebook and Instagram are banning ads for the new movie about Ronald Reagan's life, and a council member was arrested on federal bribery charges. So we're going to talk about all those and more. And without further ado, let's get into the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. Robin DiAngelo, the infamous author of White Fragility, plagiarized several minority scholars in her doctoral thesis, according to a complaint filed with the University of Washington. So here's where the funny part is Robin DiAngelo, according to the Washington Free Beacon's research, put out this accountability statement on her website, which makes people, or where she tells people, fellow white people, of course the fellow whites, that they should, quote, always cite and give credit to the work of BIPOC people who have informed your thinking. So of course she's saying, like, make sure you cite everything you take specifically from a black person. Like, it's worse if you take it from a person of color. And so Robin DiAngelo has also been cited saying, when you use a phrase or idea you got from a BIPOC person, referring to Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, please credit them. But here's the funny part, obviously, is that we know she seemingly took her 2004 dissertation titled Whiteness and Racial Dialogue, a Discourse Analysis, and lifted 2 paragraphs from an Asian American professor, as well as Robert Kryzak, who is, I guess, Black, I think is what, unless I read that wrong. Oh, yeah. There's a bunch of Asian American professors, which I guess maybe it's considered less important that it's an Asian American. It's that's not a BIPOC person according to the left, which is crazy. But if you're in the listening audience, you can't obviously see this part. But if you're in the video audience, which you should be, you can kind of get the visual for all of this. You can see how much of these paragraphs are just copy and pasted from these other minority scholars into Robin DiAngelo's work. So here you go. On the left side, you'll see it's like everything in red. Again, you should come see this on YouTube if you're in the listening audience. Everything in red here is what's been copy and pasted from Nakayama and Kryzak by DiAngelo in her whole entire doctoral thesis. And it's not just this one. There's so many examples. Look at this, is like almost word for word an entire paragraph. Here you have Lee versus DiAngelo. There's even more. This is Cloyes. Again, these are names of other scholars. It is just all red for people that are not looking at this. It's just all red. It's just Robin DiAngelo copying and pasting from other scholars, specifically scholars of color or scholars in the BIPOC community that she claims to care for. And like, we all know that Robin DiAngelo is a fraud, but there is something different about like inter-scholar kind of knockdowns, especially knocking down someone's credibility at this magnitude. I actually think it's very important in red pilling a specific group of people that maybe you and I aren't a part of. So Robin DiAngelo charges like $40,000 to come to your business, your place of work, your organization, your school, nonprofit, whatever. She comes in, she charges like $40,000 for either a speech or a seminar to tell white people that they're racist as a white person. She's a white woman, okay? And then people believe her because she's credentialed, because there's this group of people in America that I couldn't disagree with more that believe that credentials mean everything. So when she's showcased as this academic, okay, people will believe whatever an academic says because they really believe in this credentialing. But when she's showcased as an academic phony, this speaks to a sector of people who make her seem legit. It red pills these people to go, wait, this woman was a liar the whole time? Again, like you and I, we totally get it. I saw right through it from the beginning when this was her whole shtick. I was like, come on. No one really believes this, right? But there are people that if you have a PhD or a DR or whatever, doctor, next to your name, your opinion matters more. There are people in the world that think that way. I personally hate it. It's like this weird obsession with credentialing. I think it's so dumb. Seriously, I mean, if you didn't think it was dumb, look at Dr. Jill Biden. That is just like the textbook example of how these letters are just so vapid and pointless. But I ultimately do think that stories like this, while underreported, are incredibly important in red pilling a group of people that might otherwise not see the sham, the very obvious sham that is Robin DiAngelo. Okay, on to our next story. Facebook and Instagram banned advertisements for the biopic movie about Ronald Reagan starring Dennis Quaid. The content was flagged as too political for an election year by the social media platforms. From the New York Post, it says a letter obtained by the Post shows an executive of Rawhide Pictures, so Rawhide produced the movie Reagan, and they were asking, the productions company was asking Mark Zuckerberg to allow the film's account to freely post as well as advertise their content on the platform, but the turndowns have been blocked. So 2 weeks ago, a Facebook spokesperson told Newsweek magazine the rejections were incorrectly applied and there are no longer restrictions, but the movie producers say that that's not true. That's not at all what happened. Eric McClellan is the movie's digital marketing director and said that Zuckerberg has not responded to their requests seeking answers, and they cannot promote their film on Meta platforms, so it's Facebook or Instagram. Facebook even said they are, quote, concerned our content could sway public opinion or the outcome of an election. That is what Facebook said about the Reagan movie. And I thought the movie's digital marketing director said this very poignantly, but our content is about a movie. It's 9 positive quotes, the PR that they're doing, from Ronald Reagan, who hasn't run in an election in 40 years. Like, there's no rationale for how that could actually impact the 2024 election. I couldn't agree more. In no world does promoting Ronald Reagan help Donald Trump or hinder Kamala Harris in this election. There's no world in which that exists. But I think the first thing that your mind jumps to when you talk about a story like this is, the algorithms blah, are biased. Okay, the algorithms are biased against political content. Yes, we've seen that. I've personally seen that. But specifically, I think it's a general feeling in conservative world that the algorithms are specifically biased against conservative political content. And while I do believe the algorithm has something to do with this, of course, most of these algorithms are somewhat robotic. They're flagging content based on how the metadata and how the robots are kind of programmed. The AI is programmed to flag things. And of course, that is inherently biased. But another bias that we just don't really talk about is how long it takes humans to react and respond to something like this. Because yes, of course, the robots are going to flag things that the left-wing programmers program them to flag, right? We're all aware of that. That's not new. I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here, okay? But what I do think is flawed when we talk about this conversation is we need to realize how the human beings who are inherently political, like Mark Zuckerberg and like his employees, they seem to be so slow to respond when it comes to answering conservative inquiries. But they're quick to respond if, Joe Biden asks them to take down a story that they don't like, right? It's very, very odd, convenient. Ooh, I'm a conspiracy theorist for that, I think. And in general, I hate that social media companies think it's their job to moderate content during an election year. Like, it's not your job. I'm not thinking that hard about what my algorithm is feeding me and what it's not feeding me. It's like a weird narcissism that Mark Zuckerberg and Jack, who used to own Twitter, and all these people think, people are going to figure out what's real and what's not, okay? They don't need an algorithm or fake fact checkers telling them what's real or not, okay? People are going to believe their biases whether the algorithm feeds it to them or not, okay? So leave it alone. Let the best content flourish. I don't think it's real freedom of anything. There's no freedom of anything when social media is so wildly manipulated every 4 years to make sure that certain content isn't there. That is just so narcissistic of these social media companies. We don't need you. We're free thinkers. We live in a free society. We are going to associate how we please. Please just let us do that. And there are tons of people out there who would call my take conspiratorial, but I'm honestly I'm proud to be called a conspiracy theorist because I think that means I'm right a lot of the time. And so anyway, with that being said, because of this label, I've decided to introduce my newest line of hats. My based hat is still available if you like it, but this is the conspiracy theorist hat. Comes in black, comes in white. It's super cute and also cool. And the back is also super cool. It says, based in truth because duh, the base hat on the back says based in logic, and now the conspiracy theorist hat says based in truth. Just so you guys know, when you do buy these hats, when you support basedinlogicapparel.com, you are directly supporting me and my work. So that is the best way to support me right now. Head over to basedinlogicapparel.com to get your conspiracy theorist hat, and be sure to tag me on Instagram when you do so. Next up, a DC council member named Trayon White Sr. was arrested on federal bribery charges. Trayon allegedly accepted $156,000 in cash payments in exchange for pressuring government officials to extend contracts. So contractors were paying Trayon to extend their contracts in this sort of like pay-to-play scheme. A criminal complaint alleges that back in June of this year, Trayon White Sr. agreed to accept a ton of cash payments in exchange for leveraging his role as a DC council member to pressure government employees at the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement and the Department of Youth Rehab Services to extend several of the contracts with the district. So this guy is 40 years old and made his initial appearance in a packed federal courtroom last Monday and was released pending further proceedings. If he is found guilty, the charge carries a maximum sentence of 15 years in prison. This guy right here, his name, like I said, Trayon White Sr., is the chairman of the DC Council's Committee on Recreation, Libraries, and Youth Affairs, which oversees several agencies, including the city's Youth Rehab Services Department. All of this to say he has a lot of power and sway. And so what was happening was that these individuals, the contractors, were spending a percentage of their contract to ensure that their contracts kept coming. And this politician seemingly had no problem doing that. According to NBC News, the contracts that were allegedly pushed for by White were extended, they extended for a value of $5.2 million. So these two companies were going to receive $5.2 million. I believe that's in total, so each was getting $2.6 million. Either way, they were spending a portion of that to make sure and ensure that they were getting millions and millions of dollars. Now, if I was going to use my personal funds to go about and lobby on the inside and be a corrupt politician, I don't know that I would do it for just $156,000. I know, I see the contracts. I'm in the government. $5.2 million is a lot of money, and you're telling me I only get $156,000? I wouldn't turn that down. Don't get me wrong. That's one heck of a paycheck. But if I'm doing something super illegal, you better be paying me for more than $156,000. Just saying. I'm not saying I would accept bribes, but I'm just saying if I were, hypothetically, I wouldn't just be taking a little amount of money for a huge scandal, right? But I just think that absolute power, what's the phrase? Absolute power absolutely corrupts. Politics is either going to make you a principled, standalone person where you go in and you stand by your guns, you stand by as a principled person, or you go into politics and you crack under the pressure and you make horrible decisions like this guy did. But anyway, you know what? I got to be real with you. I vowed to be authentic with you guys. So I always need to be real with you guys about my biases. And I have to let you know, I have a vengeful, honestly, guttural rage hate for the local DC government. I don't know if I told you guys I used to live in DC from 2019 to 2021. I lived there for 2 years. And I used to live in this area kind of in... there are two trendy spots. One's called the Wharf and one's called Navy Yard. They're trendy-ish spots, or they were trendy when I was living there. And I kind of lived in this little middle area between them. And there's this duck pond by my old apartment. And let me just say, this was the middle of COVID. I keep talking. This is the theme of today's episode, is my battle with Rona. But anyway, this was during the height of the pandemic, and there were homeless people sitting around this duck park, dying, coughing. It was so sad to watch. And the duck pond, all of a sudden, the duck pond park area, all of a sudden went under construction. And I swear this all ties in. And at one point I was okay, well, I got out my phone and I was looking, I'm okay, what construction could they possibly be doing? I'm so confused. Like, it's the middle of COVID. Why are we doing construction on a park right now? There's like homeless people dying in the streets, right? And I go to the Department of Parks and Recreation, and they have approved $1 million budget to redo the piping in the fucking duck pond while people are dying. And I literally, in the most Karen way ever, I could, like, the rage, like I said, the guttural rage I felt in that moment, I literally called the Department of Parks and Recreation. I was like, the fuck are you guys spending literally $1 million on a fucking duck pond while people are dying of COVID on the streets? And it wasn't like I had like this fear of COVID. I was just like, how is this how you operate a local government? It just showcased to me how stupid people are. And I know I can hear the comments. People are going to be like, oh, well, are you surprised? They're a liberal government. Like, yeah, I still am. I get that there are liberals. And then this, I think, is just like downright stupidity, okay? This is downright stupidity. It's even worse than being liberal. Anyway, I promised to open up, and here I have. Okay, let's move on to our next story. Speaking of bribery, speaking of stupidity, Democratic Senator Bob Menedenz, who just stepped down from his Senate seat after being charged with 16 felony counts of bribery, is reportedly in talks with Biden to negotiate a pardon. If you didn't follow the story at all, I'm going to get you up to date on kind of just the most important parts of all of this. So Senator Bob Menedenz, he's a New Jersey lawmaker. Last month, he was convicted of 16 felony counts of bribery and corruption for accepting cash and gold bars in exchange for using his powerful post to enrich and protect 3 businessmen and the Egyptian and Qatari government. He has specifically asked for a pardon or reduction in his sentence. This is from a source, a political operative in New Jersey. So where the kind of interesting thing happens is, Menedenz, he's older. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's older. And him and his wife could face over 200 years in prison. He's going to be sentenced in October. And what was happening is he was just planning on not resigning after he found out that he was getting, he had 16 counts of felony charges against him. And he was planning on running again for re-election, which, like, the amount of delusion you have to have after you get indicted for 16 felony counts of actual felonies, it's just a little delusional. But anyway, he decided that because the Democrats had kind of kicked him out, because even the Democrats realized that this was absolutely insane to allow this man to be a part of their Democratic organization or whatever. After he was kicked out, he began running as an independent for the upcoming election, but he dropped out last week. Sources are saying that he dropped out as a bargaining chip of the Democratic Party. So people had this idea that Democratic operatives behind the scenes were like, hey man, hey Bob, if you stay in the race, you're going to cut off a sliver of the vote. You're going to split the Democratic vote between people that are going to vote for you because of your name recognition and people that are going to vote for our new candidate, resulting in a victory for the Republicans, which they obviously don't want. So instead, it's kind of been circulating around or whispering that Menedenz may receive a pardon from the Bidens because he dropped out of the Senate race. So he dropped out of the Senate race in exchange for a pardon for, like I said, a 200-year potential prison sentence, which obviously he's old as shit. So, he's not going to make it 200 years. No one would make it 200 years. And even if an infant was put in jail tomorrow, they're not making it 200 years in prison. So this is a life sentence. But in all honesty, I'm sitting here, I'm like, in no world is Bob Menedenz getting a pardon and Hunter Biden isn't, right? Because Hunter Biden has been convicted of, I believe, 3 felony charges. And so if Hunter Biden's not getting his pardon, then why would Bob Menedenz, right? Logic tells me Biden will pardon both of them. I think that's what's going to happen because he's a lame duck now. And what does he have to gain by seeing his potential friend and son go to prison? And I also am like, okay, logic also tells me okay, he's got to pick a pardon. I'm Biden and I'm like, I get to pardon one person before I walk out of office. You think he's going to pardon Bob Menedenz over his own son? I guess I have to switch my mindset because in my head, it's logical to pick your son over a political operative, but Biden is not logical. So I guess there's a small chance he just pardons Menedenz. given that like he's old, they don't want to send an old man to prison. This guy has served the Democrats so loyally for so long. He'd do literally, clearly anything in order to make sure that Democrats stayed in power. You know, I think there are a lot of factors that a rational person could come to the conclusion, like, I'm going to pardon this man. And listen, I think a lot of bad things about Joe Biden. I've never been shy about that. But I also can't imagine him being so, I think the word would be cruel, to commute the sentence of like dickwad Bob Menendez and not his own son. Like, that's just a different level of cruel I don't think even Biden is capable of. And speaking of things that are bad, do you know how horrible your tap water is? Or guys, it's so gross to even think about. Your Brita water, do you know how gross that is? Water quality in America is down the drain. So if you want to ensure that you're getting the highest quality water while also supporting your values, look no further than Freedom 2.0. It's like H2O, but with the freedom, right? Freedom 2.0 is an America First company dedicated to bringing you high-quality reverse osmosis water. And the best part is you can actually just go on their website, set up subscriptions, so you never go thirsty. When you head into the description of this episode, you'll see a link to get Freedom 2.0. Be sure to use that link specifically to get your products because it helps support this show. All right, let's get into our final story for the day. This is a two-parter for you. General Motors announced it has laid off more than 1,000 salaried employees. What's key here, I think, is realizing where a good chunk of these layoffs are coming from. So layoffs include roughly 600 of the 1,000 approximate jobs at GM's tech campus near Detroit. Now, Detroit is in Michigan. Michigan is a swing state. So seeing the economy tank in the way that it has and specifically implicate your job where you lost your job in Michigan in a swing state, big freaking deal. I know that doesn't seem like this isn't the coolest, most interesting news story. This has serious ramifications to our upcoming election, right? The cuts come as automakers attempt to reduce costs. So this is across the board. And in many instances, employee headcount amid fears of an industry turndown. The other thing they cite is that GM has spent so much money, billions with an S, billions of dollars on all electric vehicles and so-called software-defined vehicles. Okay, so we established that these layoffs are happening because the economy is in the tank, right? And because there's intervention from the government that encourages electric vehicle production, which is costing GM a fortune, but there's no market for the electric vehicles. So here's the kicker. Their competitors, GM's competitors, Ford, just scrapped their EV plan because there's no demand from Americans for EVs. Ford is adjusting its electrification strategy with cost-cutting measures and a change in its vehicle lineup to handle reduced customer demand. So again, a Michigan-based manufacturer scrapping its plans to roll out a 3-row electric sport utility vehicle, and instead it's just going to keep these hybrid models. Ford is also delaying the launch of its new electric truck model, because who the hell would want that? And a year later, or they're pushing the release back a year later and shifting its battery sourcing to help lower the EV cost because it's hella expensive to create these things. Now, I am of the belief that you have to have a prerequisite to have no understanding of basic economics in order to be put into the White House. Like, that's just like a prerequisite, okay? At least on the left. And so what's happening here is just the very basic economics. The government is intervening and causing businesses through tariffs on their gas emissions to spend excessively on developing electric vehicles. Then the company is forced to spend money on something that they're not really getting a return in because people don't really have a demand for EV. And that's resulting in layoffs in a massive swing state, right? When you see Ford dumping EV and then you see GM spending money on developing EVs when there's no demand for it, people are going to start losing their jobs over this. There's going to be political hell to pay. I don't know if this is necessarily going to happen in time for the election. Not that this is what this is about. This is tragic that people are like losing their jobs. Companies are going bankrupt over government intervention. That is sad enough in and of itself. I don't necessarily need to see a political ramification, but this will, whether it be in the 2024 election or we see it in like the midterms in 26 or something like that. There is going to be hell to pay for this. But okay, that's all we got for Underreported Stories today. But the show is not over because we have an edition of the segment Random Racism.
Random Racism!
So every morning I sit down and I read my morning news, and it's just a little mix, okay? We got a mix of the right, we got a mix of the left, we got a mix of we put everything into the meal of eating my morning political news, okay? I do it all. And so when I was doing my regular, research this morning, I came across this Politico article about how Kamala Harris is picking how she wants to do her first like big interview since announcing that she's the president or like going to receive a nomination. So glasses on because it's a lot of words, but I'm going to read this to you just like I would be if I was like sitting at home in the morning reading this. So this is a part of Politico. It reads, "What's the goal? There's been considerable debate in Harris world about the purpose and timing of the interview. The main narrative in the political press is that Harris needs to do a lengthy, serious interview with a brand name news anchor who will push her on issues." There isn't a single person out there that's going to push her on the issues. That's just like not going to happen. It's going to be a softball interview. So that's already a checkoff, right? Then says Harris herself has expressed disagreement with that view, okay? So she doesn't want a serious interview. Instead, what she wants is a big, or not like a big showy interview. She wants someone who's going to kind of, how do you say it? It's like the first goal should be to peel back some layers on the vice president and show some new dimensions to her. She kind of wants like an E-style interview, like what she did with Mindy Kaling. And this is, if you're not familiar with this interview, she kind of like sat down and like cooked Indian food with Mindy Kaling, who's a huge actress, huge producer, huge screenwriter. She was in The Office, like big personality. And so Kamala Harris wants to do some sort of like sit down E-style interview. It says like, there are questions about her worldview and ethos and who she is as a leader. The convention, she noted, dealt mostly with her bio, so an interview should aim to add depth in these areas. The second goal would be policy. So the first goal is not to explain to the American people what her policy is. The first goal is to make it seem like an E interview, okay? And then it says like, show her visuality as the commander-in-chief. That's another chief goal of this. So they want to take her inside her home. So Kamala Harris wants you to come into her home and do like a Blake Lively celebrity style, like, welcome to my home, let me show you around. Like, I can't think of another reason why people just don't take women in this role seriously. Like, oh my gosh. Outside of women, like, we don't care about your home, okay? We don't care about what curtains you picked or what carpet you have in the National or the Naval Observatory. I care about your policies, and that is the second goal that you have, not your first. That's problematic to me. And so the article says that she wants to pick Gayle King from CBS. And here's where I tie in kind of the random racism of this segment. It says, who else is in the running outside of Gayle King? People are talking about ABC's David Muir, CBS's Nora O'Donnell, or NBC's Lester Holt. Other people in the running are Savannah Guthrie, Dana Bash, Jake Tapper, Anderson Cooper, Caitlin Collins, and Abby Phillip. Outside of Jake Tapper, who's allegedly not gay, everybody on there is either a female or or a minority. And that literally is what the Harris campaign is saying. Almost everyone we talked to said Harris will consider race and gender in making her choice, and that she would be keen to sit down with a black and or female reporter. And then Politico adds this in, though nobody believes that's a requirement. Watch. Just watch. It's going to be Abby Phillip or Gayle King because they're black and female and they hit both of those requirements. That's exactly what's going to happen. It's not random. It's just racism. Okay, now we're going to play oh my gosh, sorry, I got to take my glasses off. Okay, we're going to play one last segment today. It's my favorite game. It's called Is It Real or Is It Satire?
Is it real or is it satire?
You cannot be serious!
Here's the headline for you, okay? The Attorney General of New York told a reporter that she's afraid that Donald Trump, the man she prosecuted for political reasons, will prosecute his political enemies. This is a really sad reality. So this is real. A comedian / journalist, I think his name is Lionel. He's whatever. I met him very briefly at the RNC, but he's this comedian journalist who went to the DNC and he went up to people pretending to be like a far leftist. And specifically, he went up to Letitia James, who is the Attorney General in New York, went up to her at the DNC and started asking her about how awful it would be to politically prosecute enemies.
Are you worried Donald Trump's going to weaponize the justice system if he gets in power?
I'm concerned about Project 2025. And it's important that individuals understand that Project 2025 basically consolidates power in the hands of one dangerous man. Yeah. And so it's really critically important.
Prosecuting his political enemies.
Exactly.
Guys, I have to say, you are even more beautiful in person.
Oh, I love him. I love you. Thank you so much.
You guys, this woman literally vowed to prosecute her political enemies. There's a speech from, it was August of 2018, this campaign speech in which she promised to prosecute and bankrupt Donald Trump. And then that's exactly what she did. She prosecuted Donald Trump on the basis of nothing, on the basis of things that didn't cause anybody harm. She prosecuted her political enemy. Again, no one claimed to be harmed in the making. It was all out of political spite. And then she has the audacity to say that Trump is the threat?
Do you know how delusional you sound?
Anyway, for the real ones out there, if you love today's show, please drop the water emoji in the comments to show support for our newest sponsor, Freedom 2.0. And seriously, I'm not kidding you when I say, if you love my show, if you want to support my work, buying my conspiracy theorist hat, buying this, or getting a pack of Freedom 2.0 water using my affiliate link below, it goes a long way in making sure that this show can be free and also thrive. So thank you, friends. I'll see you guys back here for the podcast on Thursday. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment about how beautiful, stunning, and funny I am. And if you want more content based in logic, be sure to click over here for more videos and clips of my show. If you have the means to financially support the show, consider purchasing from my merch line, Based Apparel, linked right below. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye, friends.